Yo, Sleepy Sheepy here. Today we're going to be looking at the Golem Fist. So this is a fist weapon with a unique heavy attack, and we'll cover that in just a second. But real quick, we'll look at the build, and that's going to be a level 139 build with really maximized strength. So this gets an A scaling in strength, so we're going to be running 70 strength, 40 endurance, 58 vigor, and 11 intelligence and 11 faith, since that's a requirement for the weapon. We'll also have the Imp Wolf head that gives us 2 of our points in endurance, and then we'll have the Armor of Solitude and Fingerprint Greaves and Greaves of Solitude, and that's going to give us 116 poise. We'll also be running the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia and Millicent's Prosthesis to boost our consecutive attacks. We'll have the Bullgoat Talisman for poise, and then the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman I find to be very helpful in this build because it consumes quite a bit of stamina. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. We'll also have the Divine Beast Frost Stomp Ash of War. So this is a remembrance-based Ash of War, and it can be charged for bigger AoE and more damage. So that's the uncharged version, and then the fully charged version looks like that. So definitely a fun one to have in the mix. I wasn't totally sure what to run with this. There's a couple different options, and later in the showcase we'll be running it with Blink Bolt. So just kind of keep that in the top of the mind. But yeah, the special thing about this weapon is it's got the normal moveset of the Spike Cestus, but if you go for the R2, you get a projectile, or essentially you throw the glove, and you can fully charge it and throw both gloves for multiple hits. So that's going to be pretty cool. The thing about this, and the reason we need the Turtle Talisman, is that a fully charged heavy does about half your stamina bar, and even an uncharged heavy does a huge chunk of stamina, even with 40 stamina. So yeah, it's worth noting that that's going to be a thing, so having this new talisman that greatly raises the stamina recovery speed is going to be extremely helpful. So I had a lot of fun with this. I think, you know, there's a lot of great ways to get different poise breaks with the running heavy. You can kind of go for the running heavy and then get a roll catch with the heavy attack, and obviously these are just like, you know, strong fist weapons. They have higher AR than fully upgraded Starfist, so that's something to consider. Yeah, so very cool to have a unique moveset on some new fist weapons, and let's go ahead and just see how they work in the showcase. As always, if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I'd appreciate it. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. All right, so our first invasion here is going to be in the storehouse, a favorite of mine for sure. I just love the verticality of this place to invade. And we're going to have a group of 3 here. So this player is going to be running the Dryleaf Arts. We're going to try to punish their attack on the PvE with a nice Frost Pot. And we do notice that they're light rolling, which is a bit of a concern. The Dryleaf Arts actually have a good way to kind of counter the just regular fist moveset, in my opinion. I feel like the Dryleaf Arts, just their poise breaks come out a little bit faster and do a good job of punishing things. However, this opponent that we're dealing with now is switching between a colossal weapon as well as fists, and their multiple swings with the colossal weapon just leave them open for a backstab. So we roll in and grab that, and here we go for a heavy attack, and just kind of keep an eye on my stamina bar whenever I go for a heavy attack, because the stamina consumption is absolutely wild. And also just for having a fist weapon where chase downs are super important, I think getting that quick stamina recovery can be exceedingly helpful. So yeah, the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman is one that I'm a fan of. So we go ahead and throw out our Ash of War. We get a nice jumping attack to punish their jumping attack, and we don't run in and get hit by the Palm Blast, which is really nice. That can do quite a bit of damage, especially if you charge that Ash of War. However, a hunter does get summoned into the world, so we're a little bit concerned about that. We're kind of looking around trying to figure out where the hunter actually is, and we're not going to be too aggressive. We don't want to run in and get hit by the host's sword, because that sword has a true combo between the light attack and the follow-up attack. Actually, not the sword they're using now, but the Fire Knight's great sword, which is a sword they will be pulling out a little later. They also throw down a heal, which fortunately does not hit the Phantom there, so they don't get healed by that new incantation, and we're able to kind of just continuously avoid the damage coming from the Phantom, and now a blue with a Duelist Shield has come into the mix, which is something we don't love to see, and we feel like, again, we need to back up a little bit. We can't get caught in the blender, especially when we're dealing with somebody with a Duelist Shield. So we want to grab the Hammer Talisman real quick and see if we can get the guard break, because fist weapons are really good for guard breaks. However, we are getting a decent amount of damage, even though we're kind of trading with Duelist shield, so normally I wouldn't recommend that, but while we were trying to get the guard break, we actually realized that we were just winning trades, and I think some of our swings were actually coming around the side of where the guard happened, so that was a really nice moment there where we were able to punish a player using a very scary setup. However, we do still have the Runar Toast as well as the Phantom to contend with, and we're throwing out some of our Ash of War to see if we can get a little chip damage without being too committal. We throw a Frost Pot and actually land it, which was pretty nice given the range, and here we throw a Frost Pot at the ground, which was a bold move. If they had enough robustness to avoid getting frosted, that would have been a very bad trade. We do start trading a little bit with the Phantom here, and though we feel like we have enough HP to tank a hit, our blood loss meter is way too high for us to stay in that situation, so we need to back off and see if we can spend a little bit of one-on-one time with the host, because the Phantom fortunately did die to PvE. So now we're beginning the chase down on the host here, who has pulled out the Fire Knight's Greatsword, so we need to respect that a lot. We are really going to be going for the whiff punishes if we can, and maybe some jumping heavies, which will break their poise. So yeah, you can see both those things coming out. We do over 700 damage with the jumping heavy. I think the alternative route for this setup is going to be using a Claw Talisman just to really boost those jumping attacks as much as possible. The successive attack talismans are always a great option, but those jump attacks do a lot of damage. So we do come out with the heavy attack and get the projectile for the finish, which was awesome, and we can move on to our next one. So these are going to be two players in the tower settlement area, and one of them does have fist weapons as well, primarily the dry leaf arts, and as I was mentioning, it can be a little bit hard to aggress into those. They get seemingly an earlier poise break on their setup than we do, so the trades can be a little brutal. And then we're going to see this player, the Phantom rather, is going to be pulling out a parry shield at some point, so we're going to need to try to play around that. But we do have this area that we can go to anytime we need a little bit of a breather, where there's going to be at least some incantations coming down from the PvE, and that's super helpful. This Phantom does pull out the Wing of Estelle, which I don't know, I don't totally understand their build. I guess it was like probably a Frost like in type situation, and here as they pull out the parry shield and the dagger in the offhand, we just are very conscientious of that, so we go for a jumping heavy rather than anything else that could get parried, and we throw out a random heavy attack scene if we can get a nice poise break from a distance. However, it doesn't quite reach. The range on them is not amazing. I would say it could be a little bit better. Also, the damage, I think, falls off, so the further away your opponent is, the less damage the projectile is going to do, and sometimes it can be as low as like 190, which, I mean, for a non-committal just type of thing, it's not too bad, but the stamina consumption is really where it kills you. So yeah, keep your eye on that. Like, you'll feel it when you start using the weapon. I think that's I don't know if that was bugged or if it's just kind of an issue with balancing, but it feels like the stamina consumption is too high for the amount of damage and the range that comes with the projectile. So we're going to come in and just aggress this player. It's kind of hard to aggress this player with fists because they have a parry shield out, and so we really need to be cautious of that, because parries in this game can just be a one and done type situation. So here we bait them into a parry, and then we go in for a jumping attack as they go for a second parry attempt. So had we gone in for a running attack, that would have been a big problem. They start going after us with their offhand or their main hand dagger, and our frost meter is quite high, so rather than get frostbitten and take a bunch of damage, we pull back a little bit and just try to like find a good spot. Going for like a turn and burn on the host with our Hoarfrost Stomp is going to be not a bad idea if it can, you know, deter them from getting closer for a second. But here we actually get the guard break, and I was so sad in this moment and don't fully understand what happened, but they took 13 damage or something from the Hoarfrost Stomp that we went for as a wake up, and I feel like that's too low given that the fan daggers did like 30 damage each. So kind of confusing there. I don't know if it had to do with their roll timing. I would assume it did, but pretty strange because that damage seems quite low. But we do follow up with a couple trades with the host and come out with the victory here. Again, we're going to be in the tower settlement area. We go for a nice jumping attack doing over 700 damage and also shutting down the Ash of War from the Phantom. Here we get a nice little poise break, and I just feel like it's super cheeky when that happens, where you can just like turn to one player, throw your glove at them, and then focus back on the other player, because it does come out quite quickly. So I think it's hard to dodge that type of thing. Here we go for our Hoarfrost Stomp again, and we're not quite able to land it. It's just out of reach, which is unfortunate. We go for a heavy attack and then a couple of trades, and just trading into fists with a katana is not going to be a good move. The poise breaks you're trying to get are not going to come in the way that you'd hope for them to come. So we go for the Frost Stomp again. Does a bit of damage, not anything too crazy. I think I've been running some more broken setups recently, so when you come to something that's a little bit more balanced, it just feels like a little lackluster. But we do follow up our running attack with just some heavies, and that allows us to get the victory. Our next opponents here are going to be a group of 3. We do have a mage in the background, so we're going to be trying to avoid their Star Shower and just, try to get behind some walls if we can. We wouldn't mind if they waste some of their FP, and then, we'll see who makes sense to focus on as we try to, just kind of suss out the situation. We throw some Frost Pots and see that there's not a ton of HP on the mage, so not unusual, but it still can be kind of dangerous to aggress somebody like that. We throw out a random heavy attack, which poise breaks both opponents, which is really nice in that moment. Again, Dryleaf Arts coming out from the host, and we do manage to get a nice jumping attack on this Phantom here, and then we do knock them down as well, so they have to deal with the get up animation. Unfortunately, the Frost Stomp does not quite reach them, but we do manage to aggress them with some running lights and finish off that player as we're getting chased down from the host from behind. So all the meanwhile, the other Phantom, I believe, died to the PvE upstairs, so it's just a one-on-one. And here we can see just the matchup between these two definitely feels like it favors the Dryleaf Arts, especially the jumping attack, like the height at which the first attack comes out, and the quickness of it just feels like it kind of shuts down what you're trying to do. They're able to run in, get a jumping attack, and then get out before my heavy attack lands, so kind of unfortunate. They also go for a Palm Blast, which just means we need to totally back up and respect that. And then here they make the kind of bold decision of pulling out the backhand blades, and I really find that especially with blind spot you can get a nice jumping punish on it, so we're able to do that, and then we can kind of move on with our day here. So this next one is going to be a group of 2. We have the element of surprise, so we land a pretty big jumping heavy for about half this opponent's health and start chasing them down with the fists. They're going to go for their Ash of War a number of times, so we definitely need to respect that and try to roll it appropriately. I'm not sure I have the whole thing down when it comes to the roll timing, but at least the beginning part I feel like I'm pretty confident about. And here, as we get a poise break, they try to run away and get clobbered by the PvE. So we're able to move on here and just kind of focus on the Rune Arc Toast, and we're going to go for some of our fully charged heavy attacks, get that stamina right back due to our talisman, and we go for our Ash of War, which does a little bit of frost buildup and also just some damage, which is nice. These are doing pure physical damage, so having those frostbites in the mix can be really helpful in just, reducing the time to kill. And here our opponent goes for the Taker's Flame. We're able to actually punish that with our Frost Stomp and get out before, Taker's Flame reaches us. So kind of a nice timing on that. And we begin the chase down and then wait till they accidentally back up into the PvE and go for the running attack for the finish. Next up, we're going to start things off by crafting some pots real quickly, and we'll see that those pots are somewhat helpful. We're able to just kind of toss them in the direction of these players, and we go for a trade with our Frost Stomp. It's not the best trade in my opinion, but getting them frosted would be pretty nice. Here we land a little over 600 damage and do a big chunk of their health bar, so we know that they're not too vigor intensive as a player, and we go for some running attacks and we trade into it. It was definitely risky going for that trade given the amount of blood loss we had and where our HP was at, but we do come out with a successful situation against that Phantom, and we totally back off because we need to heal up and get our blood loss meter down. And at this point, a Hunter is coming into the world, and I think there will be another one joining us as well. They're going to be going for some free-aimed swings with the Bloodhound Fang. They've also got that with some grease on it, so we definitely need to make sure we don't get bled in this situation. We're trying to find some good opportunities, waiting for potentially the PvE to stun our opponent, and here as one Hunter goes down, another one joins us with the Moon Ash of War. So we need to look out for those triple moons. They do a lot of damage and they take up a big area, so I think the best plan of action is to just run away here. And we're gonna go ahead and try to get them slept. I believe they do actually fall asleep here, and we can focus on the host for a second, but really we'd prefer to get the blue first. And I think we've reduced some of their FP, so that can be helpful. I think their spell also did a lot of FP consumption. And here we get the guard break on the shield for the finish, which is fantastic, and we can focus once again on the host. So the blood loss buildup on the host setup is going to be the main concern. I believe they've also started using Flame Grant Me Strength, and here we get a nice heavy attack, and they're just out of range, so we're going to go ahead and fully charge one and throw a couple stones at them and get the finish. So moments like that are why this weapon is so satisfying and just like enjoyable to have those projectiles. It's, I don't know, it's like gives a whole new meaning to drop in the gloves. But yeah, this one we're going to start out seeing our opponents pretty early and deciding that's not the best course of action. Maybe a surprise jumping attack would be better. So we're going to go ahead and actually go for a running attack and follow that up with a second running attack, which does the trick. And our opponent here goes for Rivers of Blood. We dodge most of it. Go for our Ash of War, trying to knock them out of theirs, but we're able to trade successfully into Rivers of Blood for the finish. And that's going to conclude our invasion showcase, and we can move on to the duels. All right, so our first opponent here is going to be switching over to the Nox Flowing Hammer, which is a pretty strong hammer. It has a great Ash of War and has pretty good range, and also comes with a lot of hyper armor. So here we're able to space that first attack and just kind of punish it with the unique heavy attack. And we're going to go for a jumping attack, hoping to catch them, but they're actually able to punish that pretty well while we're in our recovery frame. So we do manage to go for a running heavy, and they actually mash into it, which I was totally not expecting. So sometimes when you're a good player, you can kind of get away with stuff. People are expecting you to roll, and then you kind of start the mind games. So they go ahead and land another hit and get us very, very low on health. We managed to get them quite low as well. Here we go for Blink Bolt, hoping to maybe catch them for a little bit of damage, and then we go for a fully charged heavy as kind of a turn and burn, seeing if we can catch them with the multiple fist weapons coming their way. But they do a good job of spacing it. However, we get a nice whiff punish with a running light attack for the finish. Our next opponent here is going to be running a heavy thrusting sword, which is kind of an interesting matchup for fists, but we're able to roll it successfully, also avoid their jumping attack, and come in. And we see we have some phantom range. We're also going to be utilizing our unique heavy attack, and I kind of liked how Blink Bolt could go from, you know, it would move you into a position where your heavy attack would oftentimes land. So I think there's good synergy there. It's just the stamina consumption for both the heavy attack and Blink Bolt is quite high. So that's one thing to consider. Next up, our opponent running this funny lion head is going to be going for the reverse grip swords, and we're going to be able to trade into them fairly effectively. We take a lot of blood loss buildup, but we can balance that as they're not playing too aggressively. And then we go for Blink Bolt and try to grab that unique heavy attack, but our running heavy followed up by the heavy attack with the projectile does finish off our opponent. Moving on, we're going to have a player running the Fire Knight Greatsword, so a very scary greatsword to see in the arena. They've also got the Flower Blooms Twice Ash of War, which is not as scary when you're not poisoned. So the best thing about that Ash of War is going to be that it, you know, does a ton of damage if your opponent is poisoned or does have rot. However, I have neither. It does do rot buildup in the process, but I would say it's more beneficial if you're playing a status-based weapon, which this player is, but it's bleed. So kind of an interesting choice, but they're pretty into their Ash of War now that they've got it on, and we're aware of that. We're going to be able to roll it a little bit better, just kind of expect it. We get some punishes in with running light attack as well as our heavy attack, and there we do get a nice punish with our heavy attack while they're in the air, and then we can successfully roll their Ash of War. So good pressure with this weapon. I definitely appreciate that. Next up, we're going to have a player running the Knight setup. So the Sword of Night as well as the Claws of Night. That Ash of War is something you don't want to get too close to. We're able to kind of continuously pressure them with Blink Bolt and just throw out some of our heavy attacks. Here we go for a fully charged heavy, just kind of hoping to punish their Ash of War. They switch over to the Claws of Night, which have a very strong Ash of War with the Scatter Shot, and we're going to get headshotted in the process. We also just take a ton ton of damage as we get hit by 2 of those. I'm not sure if we got stunned from a headshot that kind of comboed into the second one, but those are very strong, and it's just a phenomenal Ash of War. So we get hit one more time, but we're able to actually combo our heavy attack into a light attack. I believe they were trying to mash out a stun, which was unsuccessful. Next up, we're going to be playing against somebody running a halberd, and we're going to need to just kind of respect the spacing of a little bit, but we can go for some nice heavy attack punishes as they go for some Bloodhound steps. So that's one reason I really like this weapon. The heavy attack is a great way to punish somebody that Bloodhound steps, you know, backwards is going to be the best instance. If they go to the side, then it's going to be a little less strong. I think the tracking would not work out quite so well. And there we go for a nice turn and burn with the fully charged version. We go for Blink Bolt, just kind of figuring out if we like it in these instances. It definitely changes your position a little bit and gives you a good option with your heavy attack to be coming from a new angle, and maybe they won't expect the timing of it. So here they mash a little bit. We go in for Blink Bolt, and then that brings us right up in front of them, and we can finish off our opponent. Next up, we're going to be playing somebody going for the kind of classic Haldag setup. So they're chilling at first, maybe a little bit AFK. Now that they've started playing, we're going to see if we can get some good openings. We go for a heavy attack, but tracking is not quite there. They go for a jumping light, which is an interesting way to play Haldag. I definitely like a good jumping light attack on a halberd, but it's not amazing. They do go for a jumping heavy, but we're able to roll it, and they're not using their offhand dagger much. I think they could be getting some nice chip hits in, but they would need to worry about me mashing into it because I will be winning those trades. So that might be kind of the theory behind it. They do get that jumping heavy, which they do a good job with, and here they start mashing with their dagger, and that's going to be a problem for the fist weapons, as I mentioned. I think you get one good swing, and then you're pretty much going to need to roll. So our next opponent here is going to be running a light greatsword, as well as a shield that could have parry on it, so we're going to be conscientious of that. Going for the heavy attack from a distance can be kind of helpful, and we go for Blink Bolt, not too much effect, but it's good to just kind of see where it fits in. I'm still getting to know it a little bit. This player goes for a running attack, and then we're able to trade in with our own heavy attack. And here we go for Blink Bolt, and that kind of puts us a little bit further away so that our heavy attack projectile is going to be in a good spot. And here we're doing a good bit of trading, and it's decently successful. However, they start coming in with the running light attacks, and they go for one too many in a row, and we're able to punish it with a jumping heavy. And that's going to conclude our duel portion of the showcase. If you have any questions, as always, let me know. And if you wouldn't mind considering subscribing, I would appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day.